So let's start the class. So hello everyone, good evening. So welcome to tutorial class 8 of problem solving through C programming um, NPTEL course. So I don't understand whenever I start the class, so people will automate. so so anyway, so let me start share my whole screen. So I hope you are able to see the screen. Okay. So so we are in week 8. Just going through a quick recap. So in the last week we have gone through some linear search in arrays, and we have try to understand what are all some pre-built functions in strings, and then we try to understand what is what is multi-dimensional arrays means, and what are all different ways that we can represent and use the multi-dimensional arrays in our programs. And so in today's lecture, so this will be the agenda for the class. So we will try to understand a bit more into the function. So what is functional declaration and what is function definition? So how sometimes we used to call this as prototype. So when we are declaring the function based on the arguments and the return type, so we will call it as a signature of a function, so the number of arguments. So we will try to understand how we declare the function, and what are all difference between, what is the fundamental difference between variable scope in terms of function. So there are global scope and local scope and block scope. So we will try to understand that. So there are different types of functions are there. So some functions may take parameters, some functions may not return values, and we will try to understand what are broadly different types of functions that are available in C. And then we will try to dig more into call by value and call by reference with some examples. And finally we will try to learn how do we pass array as an argument to the function, and followed by a sample quiz. So we are on time, I guess. So let's get started. uh, so let's try to understand. So basically the function means a group of statements that are together to perform a specific task. So eating is a function, and if you try to understand, if you try to correlate uh, these functions to the real world, so while we are walking, while we are eating, and while we are sleeping, those are all our functions. So as we as a humans as a object, so we do several functions. So this is also like a function. So in C programming language, or in terms of any programming language, we group set of statements together to achieve a specific task or to perform a specific task. So that is called as a function. So broadly, if you I try to cover this in the earlier lecture also, but I will try to cover it again. So broadly there are two types of functions that are available. So one is called as library function. So that means the programmers, or the programmers has already written some programs, some functions to perform a specific task, and that are inbuilt and that are given as a header files or some other files, and you can include those files and perform the task. So for example, we are using stdio.h in every program. So that is used for standard input output. So in order to print something onto the console, or in order to read some values, so we use that stdio.h. So that functions we are that functions which we are using, like printf and scanf. So all these functions are declared in that header file. So if you go and look for that header file, you can see all the implementations of that functions. So such a kind of functions are called as library functions, because you can just plug and play those functions to perform your task. So for example, you can just import math.h and you can call sqrt for calculating the square root. So similarly, there are another functions that are called as user defined functions. So user defined functions are like, which 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 the programmer will define for a specific task, and you have to whenever you want to declare whenever you want to write some function code, so you need to tell the compiler that okay, my function code will look like this. So that is called as function declaration. So the declaration, in the sense, you are declaring that okay, I am using this particular function in this program. So that is called as function declaration or prototype. So we use that particular thing to understand what kind of parameters that the function will take, and what is the return type of that particular function. So all these things are specified in the declaration. So before the main function you will declare, and that will be ending with a semicolon. So once you declare the function, the compiler will know that okay, there is some function called get my name, which will try to take these inputs and it will return this value. Okay, compiler will understand. Then you come down and you define that function. So that means you write the logic of that particular function by using the same signature, so that okay, whenever somebody calls that particular function from main, so it will understand that okay, I need to jump into that particular function and do that particular task and return back to the main. So this is how the function works. The function will work in C programming language, and this is the same for most of the programming language. So the basic declaration will be like, you need to specify the return type and followed by the function name, and you will define a series of parameters. So you want to pass 3 parameters, 4 parameters, or whatever parameters it may be, you can define it there. And this is called as this is called as return type and function name with parameter list, and then you define the body. And before the starting, you will declare this function towards the top. So that is how it will be. So now what I will try to tell you is that we will try to understand by using the sample picture. So let's say a program started execution and suddenly it starts calling function 1. So whenever it starts calling the function 1, so the compiler will jump here and execute this particular task or set of statements, and again it will return back to the main program or subsequent line after the function return, and it will execute series of statements, and again it will, if it finds any function call, it will jump to that particular location and execute that particular task and return. So in some cases the function may call itself also, that is called as recursive function calling, and we will try to look into that as well. Probably I will try to give some example. So this is the fundamental difference between declaring function and defining the function. So now we will try to understand this by using an example. So I will demonstrate you one example on user defined function, and I will demonstrate one example on library function as well. So this is the first basic function. So this is a user defined function. So this is called function declaration. So you are telling the compiler that okay, my return type will be integer and my function name is maximum, and it will take 2 integer inputs as a parameters, and you are specifying the semicolon. That means okay, this is the declaration of the function. So this is called as signature as well. So the number of parameters that okay, so this one. So where we are, okay, so I think we are here. Okay, so this is called declaration of the function. So whenever in main, let's say if you so whenever in main you you declare a function. So this is called as function signature. So the number of parameters and the return type. So this is called as signature. So somebody have asked this question before the class. So this is the signature. So let's say if I declare float minimum, and if I type something like int f1 float f2 and char c or something. So this is the signature of this minimum function. So it will expect you to have a return value in float, and it will take 3 arguments. So and now from the main we are trying to find out the maximum value. We are trying to read 2 values from the user, and we are doing that by using scanf, which we already know, and then here itself we are calling the function. So this is called as calling. So we are calling that particular function, and this is called as definition of that particular function. So here we are defining the logic. So make sure that whatever you declare and whatever you define has the same signature. So otherwise the compiler will not understand what you are actually calling, what function you are actually calling. So this is called as declaration, and this is called as definition. So you are expanding the function logic here, so that's why it is called as definition. So here we are trying to take 2 values as a two values as a parameters, and we are finding out the maximum, and whatever is the maximum we are trying to return those particular value to the main program. So the execution will start from here, and again it will jump from here to here to that maximum function and execute this logic, and based on this logic it will return a value which is of integer type, and we are trying to print that value. So this is quite a straightforward and simple program. So we just need to clear clang basic. Let me try to compile that program. So we are trying to enter 2 values. So 90 minus 89. So the maximum value will be 90, so that will be returned. So again we need to be very clear about this signature. So whatever you declare, that has to be same with aligning with the definition of the function. So coming to the second second program. So here we are trying to use some math.h library, and this math.h library has several functions. So tan, you can find the sine value of that some degree, and cos value, tan value, and you can find the seal value. Seal means it will make it to the top. So 4.5 seal value will be 5, and floor value will be it is going to make it to the number which is less than this one, and we are trying to find out the power, and which is of this is exp means exponential, and the square root and all this stuff. So I think I have given a clear detailed link for this thing, so you can understand what these functions are actually doing by going through this particular link. So from the time being I will just try to run this program. So main thing you need to understand is that we have not written any logic for this thing. So these are all pre we just included that header file. Those logic of all these functions will be there available in this header file that we have included, and compiler will know that okay, the definition of that particular function will be there in that header file, and it will go there and execute it. So that's why these are called as library functions. So because the definitions will not be written by the programmer, so that is always available to the compiler in the form of header files. So we will try to compile this program math.c -o math/math. So you can see the value. So the root of 10 will be 3 point something, and you can see the seal value will be 5, and the floor value will be minus 5, and the power will be 2, and then sine value, sine 0 is 0, so cos 0 is 1, and tan 0 is 0. So I just made some example which is available, so you can dig more into this. So let me come back to the lecture notes. So this is all about the fundamental things that you need to understand. So now we are entering into another important topic called variable scope. So variable scope is very important topic that you need to understand, because the lifetime of a variable is very much important when you are calculating something, when you are especially when you are calling from one function to another function, whether the value will be available to this function also or only available to that function. So the scope defines the lifetime of a variable, so up to what time that particular variable is alive. So let's say there are fundamentally 2 or 3 types. So first type is called global scope. That means you will declare these particular values at the top of after including the header file. So that means it is global scope. So whatever all the functions that are available, so that can able to access that particular variable. So that's why those are called as global variables. And local scope means the variables that are declared inside the function. So let's say if you declare some variable inside maximum function, so that variable scope is limited within that function. So if you try to access that particular variable outside that function scope, you will get a compilation error, or you will get a runtime error. So because those values will not be available to the compiler after that particular function, so that is called as local scope. And there is something called as block scope also. We will try to understand this one. So by using some examples, I think it's better to look at these examples to get a better understanding. So here this program I am trying to explain the global variables. So here I have declared 2 integers, so these are called as global variables, because we have defined those variables at the top of after including the header files, and every function will know that this is okay, this is the function, these values are available to all the functions. So here in the main, so we are doing nothing, just we are assigning values to that function, to that variables, and we are calling 3 functions: addition, subtraction, and multiplication. So if you can see, the return type of all these functions is void, and it is not expecting any parameters. So whenever it is calling the addition function, so the compiler will jump here and try to execute it, but the result is num1 and num2. So we have not defined any values here, or we have not passed any values as a form of parameters. But because since we are using this global variable, so those variables will be available to this particular function also, so that it can perform the calculation and print the result. So that is the same for subtraction and the multiplication. So there is nothing we have passed to that function, or we have declared something inside that function. So all these values are operated from the top. So this is the global variables, and all the functions are just operating on those values. So this is a clear cut example for a global variable and the global scope variable. And you can see that there are several functions that can share the same values and perform the operations. So this is all about global variables. Now we will try to execute this program. Global.c global. So don't worry, this is warning, because I have not declared main return type as integer. Okay, it's cool. So you can see the number 1 value is equal to 10, number 2 is 20, and you can see all the functions. Addition will be 30 and subtraction will be 10. Subtraction will be 10, and multiplication is 200, and something like that. So the fundamental idea here is that those values are available to every function, because it is defined as a global variable. So now we will try to look into the local variables. So we are just more or less doing the same thing. We are trying to declare these variables inside the method, inside the main function, not at the top, and we are trying to assign values, and we are trying to call this sum. So I have just commented it out because uh, the moment I uncomment those values, the compiler will throw error, because compiler will not know what is num1 and num2. So either it was not declared as a global variable, or it was not passed as an argument to this function, or it is not declared implicitly here in this addition function. So the compiler will not know that, okay, this is some variable that is there in the main program. So it is obviously going to throw an error by saying that, okay, identifier num1 is undefined, so it was not there in the scope. So that is another example for local scope. So here you can't run the program because it is not there. So I would like to show you another thing here also. So let's say, so another thing here, let's say, okay, so I'm not calling this function. So okay, I am defining something here. I just wrote that, okay, int age equal to 25. So ideally, so we have defined that, okay, age value as 25. So I am just trying to print the age value. So I will just ignore this function. I will not call this function. So it is going to print two values perfectly here, and I am just trying to print the third value as percentage %d age. So clang, oh, why it is throwing again error? Can somebody tell me? It should not be the case, right? So it is there in the local scope. Can somebody answer why it is happening? Okay, I will zoom the screen. So can you guys, are you guys are able to follow? Okay, cool. So what Abhishek was trying to tell is the correct thing. So this is called as block scope. So because it is a block in a C programming language, so the whatever the variable is defined here, so that is available within this block. So if you try to copy this here and paste it here, then it will not throw any error, because okay, we are trying to use a variable which is declared, and we are using that particular variable inside that block only. So this is called as block scope. So it is not used widely, but you need to understand that this is a block scope. So this is also existing in C programming language. So so this is all about global variables and the local variables and the block scope. So I think you guys have a good understanding about this scope. So now we will try to look into the types of functions. So broadly, in C there are 5 categories of functions. So for the first one is the function with no arguments and no return values. So what we have seen in this example is the example for this one. So it will not take any arguments and it will not return any value. So this is called as functions with no arguments and no return values. So the control flow will just go here with no parameters. You don't need to pass any parameters, just execute this block and it will come back, and it has to do nothing, it has to return nothing. So this is called as no arguments and no return values. And another type of functions are called as functions with arguments and no return values. So let's say function 1 is there, it will call function 2 with some argument. So function 2 will have some parameters, and it will execute that function, and it will not return any value. So this is also a popularly known. So let's say if you are trying to pass use some printf kind of thing, so it will try to take the value and do something with it, print it on console, and it will not return any value. So this is called as function with this is called as one way communication. So you pass some arguments to the function 2 whenever you are calling, and you are not getting any value in return. So this is called as functions with arguments and no return values. And the third one is function with arguments and return value. So this is the most popular, and what we are seeing now is this type 3 function. So we are calling some functions and we are passing some parameters, and then we are doing some manipulations with the parameters, and then we are giving some results. So this is called as type 3 functions. So this might be two-way communication. So there are another function, the fourth kind of functions, the function with no arguments but return value. So whenever you are calling this function 2, so it will not take any arguments, but it will return some values. So for example, here I have shown some program. So let me try to minimize it. So okay, so here I have declared a function called get number. So it is void, so it will not take any arguments while executing. So whenever somebody calls this get number, so it will not take anything, just it will scan a number from the user console and return that particular number to the to the user. So it will return an integer variable to the calling function. So this is called as this type of functions are called as function with no arguments but return values. And finally, people are saying that there are some functions that return multiple values. So how this is possible? So when I was in my BTech time, I was wondering how this is possible, because you can only return. So whenever you are declaring the function during the signature, you are saying that okay, we are expecting it to be integer return value. So in all the functions that we have declared here, so we are telling that either it's a void or it's a integer value or something. So it is expecting one variable to be returned. Then how this thing is possible? So for this thing, there is a way to do this particular thing. So that means the function will take something and return multiple values. So that is possible by using the pointers. So we will try to understand this one with an example. So this is called as multiple return. So here I have written a very sample program. So I have declared math operation function which will take integer x, integer y, and it will take two integer pointers. I think professor has not covered the pointers in detail, but just hold this thing for this class. So maybe in the upcoming classes he will deliberately tell you. Basically the fundamental concept of pointer is a variable which can store the address of another variable. So that is the high level understanding of the pointer. So here what we are trying to do is we have declared x value as 20 and y value as 30, and whenever we are calling this function, we are passing these two values as an address. So s comma d, it doesn't have any values, so but still we are passing the address. So this kind of function will come here, and what we are trying to do is we are doing this operations on a plus b, and we are assigning this value to this sum, and this is called as difference. So here I think I have missed something very important to tell you. So you need to understand here the very important concept called what is actual parameters and parameters or arguments or formal parameters. So whenever you are calling a function, the variables or the values that we pass here in the function is called as actual arguments or actual parameters. And in the definition function, so you have the same set of parameters with different names, you do something with those formal arguments in your logic. So that is called as formal parameters. So the number of actual parameters must always equal to the formal parameters or formal argument. So this is the function calling and this is the function definition. So whatever we use here as a parameters, those are called as actual arguments, and whatever we use here as called as formal arguments, because I want to establish here. So here we have pass here we have passed integer x, integer y, integer pointer s, pointer d. So these are called as actual parameters, and whatever we have used in the method definition, those are called as formal parameters. So we can perform operations on these formal parameters, and finally that will be replicated here, because those values will be passed here and we are trying to perform some operation. So what we are trying to do here is we are trying to assign some value, addition operation on these two values, and we are assigning that to this sum pointer, and difference between these two values will be assigned to difference pointer. But we are not returning any values, but the logic here is that whenever we are trying to print those values, so we have passed here we have used call by reference. So that means the actual address of this particular values will be passed to that function. So whatever the replications or whatever the modifications or whatever the assignment that we have done to this sum and difference will be replicated in this main function. So let me try to execute this particular program so that you will get a better idea. So multiple return dot c hyphen 4 multiple m return, so dot slash m. So you can see that s value is 30 addition and difference will be 10. So this is how it will work. So even though we don't explicitly return any value, so here we are returning two values to the main program. So this is called as function with multiple return values. I think I have covered this one also well. So I need to, regarding the scope, I have to cover this particular thing. So I forgot to cover this one when I was explaining previously. So here we have seen the global declarations, global variable scope and local variable scope and the block scope. Let's say if you have declared a global integer a equal to 20, and again you have declared a value in the main, also you have declared a value is equal to 10. So this is called local declaration. So we are performing some operation on this particular values, so a b values, and here it's in main and we are calling some function and we are doing some summation operation and we are returning the value here. And you need to understand what kind of variables, or whether the compiler will take this value or this value. So that is the tricky question that we need to understand. So whenever there is a global variable and the local variable, the compiler will whenever the compiler is taking, the compiler will take the local variable value and it will do the operation. So when so you need to keep this thing in your mind when you are performing some operations on, when you are writing your own program. So for example, I will try to run this code, so to demonstrate you that how it will work. So ideally the a value is 20. So if somebody performs addition operations on 20 plus 20, so that should be 40, but because it's local variable we will be getting 30. So you can see the value of a in main is 10 and value of a in sum is 10. You can see inside whenever it called this function, so a value will be passed as 10, so value of b will be 20 and the sum will be 30. So some value will be passed here. So after performing the operation, it will return here and it will do the operation. So whenever we are calling, the local variable is passed here. So this is bit tricky to understand, and you need to be careful while you are debugging some programs or something. So that's all about the function scope and return values. So now we will try to look into two examples of first one is call by value and the second one is call by reference. So we have seen this thing earlier also, but I want to make you specifically understand why it is like this. So these are three important points or 3-4 important points that you need to remember. So in the call by value method, the value of actual parameters is copied. So the value of actual parameters is copied. So it will have a copy and into the formal parameters. In other words, we can say that the value of variable is used in the function. So it will just give a copy of this actual parameters to here, and whatever the changes that you do with the formal parameters or arguments will not be replicated to the actual parameters. So that is what they are saying. So in the call by value, different memory is allocated for actual and formal parameters, since the value of actual parameters is actually copied into the formal parameters, and actual parameter, okay, why local variable instead of global. So this is how they have defined the rules for the compiler. So that is what their rule is. Okay, so coming to the call by value, they have different memory locations, and that's why the values will be replicated here, and the actual parameter is argument which used to the function call, whereas the formal parameter is used in the function definition. So I mean I gave explicit definition for what is actual parameters and formal parameters, but the main understanding here is in call by value, the values of those particular variables will be copied and it will be operating on the formal arguments with the copied values, and so that whatever you have modified here will not be replicated onto the actual parameters or actual values. So that is the fundamental difference. Whereas if you try to understand the call by reference, in call by reference the address is passed, so it is not just copying the variables, the original variables itself will pass to the function, so that whatever modifications that you do will be replicated. So this is the simple decision making decision stump. So original value will be modified by using call by reference and will not be modified the call by value. But the reason behind that is that because it will copy the variables in call by value, so that the values will not be modified. Whereas coming to the call by reference, the actual reference, the address of those variables will be passed, so that you will get the modifications. You can see the modifications replicated on your variables. So this is the fundamental difference between call by value and call by reference. So now we will try to look these two with simple program. So in the first program, so I have declared integer x equal to 100, and before calling the value I am trying to print, and I am trying to call the change function, so which will actually try to change these values, because here we are passing actual parameters. So here the num values will be modified, but those will not be replicated after coming to the main again. So this is call by value. So clang call -work call val. Okay. My bad, excuse me. So call val. So if you try to look at the output, so before function call the x value will be 100, and before adding the value x value will be 100, and after performing the operation, so the number value will be incremented to 200, but those value will not be replicated here because just it is a call by reference. So it is just copying this memory to this variable, and it will not be replicated in the X. Coming to the call by reference, so what we are trying to do is just the same, but just we are passing the address. So this value will be passed, this address of this particular X will be passed to that change function, so that whatever the modifications that you are doing will be replicated after coming back to the main again. So that is called as call by reference. Let me clear the console and try to run and so before calling the function, X value will be 100, and before adding the function, the X value will be 100, and now the number value become 200, and surprisingly you can see that that value is replicated again back into the main as well. So this is about call by reference. So finally we will try to understand how we can pass array as an argument, and this is very much important because in most of the cases when we are taking the command line argument, as Arshad discussed previously, I mean he asked me a question, so can we read arguments from the command line, so which is possible. So if you want to take a lot of values from the user as a input, so you have to store them in array, and you have to pass the same array to some other function to perform operations on this whole array. So either it's search or finding the average of the array or whatever it may be. So you have to pass whole array to another function. So now we will learn how we can actually do it. So for while declaring, the fundamental difference here is that while declaring the parameter, you need to explicitly specify that you are passing an array here by using this open and closing braces, and it should be there as there in declaration, I mean during the signature, declaring the function and defining the function as well. So and rest of the part is same. You can just in the main you can read some array and just call those array by just giving that name, and that array will be passed here, and then you can do the operations on array. Here I am finding out the maximum value in that particular array. So you can see that lang array. So you can see the largest value here is 3.67. So by iterating value, so that is all about that I want to discuss. So these are all some fundamental concepts that you need to understand in terms of whenever you are using the functions, or whenever you are using scope and call by value and call by reference. So now what I will try to do is I will we will start some quiz. So let me post this question. So function prototype is used for what? So option A, B, C, D. So are you guys are there, or so what will be the answer for question 1? So function prototype is used for, so we have declared thoroughly about what prototype is and why we are actually using that prototype. Okay, Sadanand C. Any other answers? A. Okay. So the right answer for this question is option C, because the function prototype, that means we are declaring the function with the parameters to know the compiler, to tell the compiler that what kind of arguments that are there in that are used in the function. And so prototype in the sense declaration of the function. So that should be indicating the compiler that what kind of parameters that it will take and what kind of return values that it has to return, and the compiler will know that okay, maximum function will be having these parameters and it will return this value. So option C is the right answer for this question. So now let's come from the bottom. So we will try to understand this question. So this is quite easy. I think you guys are able to tell. Okay, B. Okay, many other questions? Any other guys would like to answer? Okay, okay. Most of the people are saying it's B. It is right, because in the main function the f will be called and f will come here, it will print 1 and it will call foo, and foo will print 2. So 1 with a space 2. So option B is the right answer. So printf is missing. What printf is missing? Why it has to have a printf? So I don't, so it doesn't need to have any printf, so just it will print. So it will call the function, man. Function will print the value. So we have seen types of functions. So the function will not do anything. It will just take. It will not expect any arguments, do something, and it will not return any value. So that is that kind of function. These functions are called as function that will take no arguments and no return values. So this is such a kind of function. So that's why I explicitly talked about these functions before. Okay. Now let's try to look into the third one. Okay, this is the third question. So here we are declaring a function and we are calling that function and we are trying to print the value of that function. So there are 3 answers which are saying that there is an error, and the fourth one is saying this is not an error. So what will be the, so from this question you might have already known that it will throw an error, but why, what is the logic behind that is the question that you need to answer. B, prototype declaration. Okay, I see. Another question, any other answers? So if there is anybody, okay, so let me try to answer this one. See, oh, you changed your mind, Arshad. So ideally C is not a right answer, because see here, now you are not returning 2 return values, man. So here it is a conditional operator and you are returning 10. So either if the condition is true, this value will return, and if it is false, this value will return. So how can you say that his answer is C? So the C is not a right answer. And prototype declaration, the prototype declaration is okay. So what is wrong in that? So we instead of declaring and defining, so they have done declaration plus defining in the same step. So that is also okay. And the third one is the main logic here is that the return statement cannot be used in conditional operator. So I would like to show you that example. So let me share the screen with you so that you can understand it in a better way. So this is a program. So the moment I try to uncomment this value, so it is saying, so expected an expression. So because the C compiler will not expect any return values in the ternary operator, so that is the issue here. So if you try to compile this, so you can see that ternary operators will not accept this thing. So that is the fundamental difference. So fundamental issue here in this problem. Let me try to share the screen. Okay, I will try to share the tab, and now we can go. Okay, this is also quite doable. So here we are passing a array, and we are doing some operation with the array, and so what might be the output of this particular code snippet? So that's what. Yes, so what might be the output of this particular program? Just try to understand the logic. So what is happening? So just we are reading the values and we are calling the function. Okay, Sadananda, you are saying it's a D. Invalid prototype declaration. I don't understand why, because we just okay, A, Sridivya, Srivijja, A, and is there any other answers from A and D? Okay, Sadananda, the prototype not declared. So no, it's not true. So the prototype age is declared. The float value array is declared properly, and they were calling. So you can declare it and define it later, but you can do at the same time as well. So it is not any issue. So the fundamental this program will work fine, and here they have passed an array to this particular function by using this result variable. So what it will try to do is it will find out the average. So the key issue here is that we have percentage 0.2f. So because of 0.2f, so you will get only 27.08. So there is a confusion between A and B. So C and D is not the option. So you can directly strike off, because this is a function and it will work. Because it doesn't have any issues in terms of compilation or in terms of assignment. So we have declared properly that this is an array, and then we are passing that array to this function, and we have used that particular array in the logic itself. So it is not a problem. So let me come back to the okay. So this is quite tricky in the sense. So manually doing this stuff is difficult. So let me try to run the program for you for this particular program, because it is difficult for you to manually trace, because it is recursive function calling, and you need to understand what a recursion is. So the recursion means the calling the function by itself. So that is called as recursion. So here you can see get is a function, and whenever you pass a variable value of 6 here, so it will take in 6 here, and it will try to call this function again. So this is the logic that I have written, don't worry, this is not there in the code snippet. So just to demonstrate you, I have written this logic. So when it is number is less than 1, it will again call this function. So this function will call repetitive number of times, and I just want to count how many times that this function is calling. So let me clear the screen. clang 2.c-o e2./e2. So you can see first it will be 6, and number will be if the number is less than 1, it will return, otherwise it will call recursively this function. So it will be 5, and it will be 4, 3, 2, 1, and it will call various times. So some of the times it might exit because the return will be calling, but that function will exit. So that will return to its callee function, and that will return to its callee function. So there is a list of recursive functions are happening, and you can see that finally there are 25 times this particular function is called. So f of 6 get 6 will be getting 25 value. So that's all you need to understand from this program. So you can write this logic and run it yourself to get more intuition, because the time is not there. I can't tell. Definitely it is not infinite times. So this is 25 times. So tracing this program is bit hard manually, but you can give it a try. So this is another function that I want to. Okay, this is also quite simple function. So you need to understand what it is doing, and then you need to figure out. So here the function is trying to take one integer value, and within that integer value it is trying to do some operation and printing some value. It is returning the sum value to the main function, and the sum will be printed. So what will be the output of that particular program? So try to understand what the logic here is. So this is quite easy program. For I equal to 1 less than n, it is trying to print, add the values to the sum. So what is it is trying to do? 15. Sadananda Kumar. Yes, you are right. So the answer for this question is 15. Why? Because the logic here is that it will find the sum of the values up to that particular number. Let's say if it is a 5, so what it will try to do here is that let me try to let me try to write it here. Okay, I will show it here. So what it will try to do is up to 5 it will count the values 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5. So this is what is happening inside that function. So the value will be 15. So option C is the right answer for this question. So we will look into the another question. So this is quite easy. So I think you should answer this. Yes. Okay, most of them are going right. So this is compilation error will be happening, because as we see in the class, so this is block scope. So the variable outside that value will not be available to this compiler, so it will throw an compilation error. This is bit tricky question. So you try to look into this question and understand what is happening. So what will be the answer for this question? So it is taking a simple function, and we are calling it will take two arguments 20 comma 1. So we are passing this is considered as n comma k. So if n equal to 0, it will straight away return. If n modulo 2 equal to if n modulo 2 means if it is a even number, so this will be coming 0. So this particular case will not be executed. Or if it is otherwise, if it is a odd variable, so it will execute this logic. So this is also a recursion. So this function f will be called by itself in various time, and you need to understand what it is. Can somebody answer this question? Okay, so shall I reveal the answer, or is anybody still trying to figure out what is happening? Okay, so logic for this program is quite bit complicated to understand. So you need to trace. So I hope you are able to see my screen. So are you guys able to see my screen? So initially, okay, let me try with this. Okay, let me try to share the screen. So this will be here and I will show the logic. So I think this particular image is visible to you, right? So initially f20 comma 1 will be called. Okay, f20 comma 1 will come here, and it is not n is not equal to 0, and n divided n modulo 2 is equal to 0. So else if will not be executed. So it will come here and it will divide 2. It will divide n by n with 2. So n will be 10 comma 2 star k 2 into 1 minus 1. So this function will again call itself. So it will come here and it will be 10. So it is again divisible by 2. I mean modulo 2 will become 0. So again the same else will be executed. So it will divide 10 with 2, so which is equal to 5, and 2 star k means 2 into 2, that is equal to 4 minus 2, and again this 5 comma 4 will again come here and it will be 5 means odd number. So this type else if will be executed, so it will be plus value. So n f of n by 2, that means 5 by 2 means 2, plus k value will be 4, 2 times 4, that is equal to 8. So plus k value is 4. So now again 2 comma 8 will be again called with and 2 comma 8 will come here and it will again execute else if statement, final else statement. So that will be 2 by 2, that is equal to 1, and finally the k value will be 2 into 8, that is equal to 16 minus 8. So finally it will calculate f1 comma 6. Here the f1 comma 6 will be like f1 comma 6 will be called here as 0 comma 32, and the 0 comma 32 the n value will become 0. So it will be having 16. So this 16 value will be given here. So 16 minus 8, which is equal to 8, and this value will be written here to this function. So 8 plus 4, which is equal to 12. So 12 minus 2, which is equal to 10, and 12 minus 2, which is equal to 10, and 10 will be written here, and 10 minus 1, which is equal to 9. So the final output will be 9. So option C is the right answer. You got it? So is there anybody having any question with that recursion? Yes. Are you guys able to follow this question? Because this kind of questions are quite possible that you might encounter it in many ways. Okay, so if anybody wants, I will share this screenshot also. You try to execute this program again in your room and try to understand it by using some simple printf statements. So that is about question 8, and this is also a recursion kind of program. So because of the time being, I will try to explain it here. So this is not actually the program, this is a prototype of the program. So just for x value is equal to 98, so this function will treat an integer. If x is greater than 1, it will reduce the x value by 10, and it will call the function by reducing the x value by 10, and otherwise it will increment by 11. So you can have a series of function calls. So initially the 95 will be the value. So 95 is less than 100, so the x value will be incremented by 106. So f of 106 is again more than 100, so x value will be decremented by 10. So f of 106 will lead to f of 96. Again 96 is less than 100, so it will again increment value, so it will add 11 to it, so 107. So again it is because of it is more than 100, it will decrement by 10, so it is f of 97, and again 97 plus 11 is 108, and 108 minus 10 98. So evaluation of this thing will be returning into 98. So 98 will be again increment 11 in value, and so this thing will go on till it reaches f of 111, which is equal to f of 101. So f of 101 means x minus 10, so which is equal to 91. So the final answer is 91. Okay, so you try to write this logic for this code and try to execute it. So we are running out of time, so on a summary, what we have discussed in today's class is that we try to understand recursion, how the recursion will work, what is the function declaration and definition, and scope of different variables across functions, and block scope and global scope and local scope, and we try to understand what are all different functions, and what do you mean by call by reference and call by value, and finally we try to learn how we can pass an array as an argument, and with some quiz questions. So this is all about today's class. So in the last question there is a colon in the second step. Yes, so that is not the actual code, this is the pseudo code of that logic. So they have given a pseudo code for that logic, you need to write logic and check. Okay, Arshad. Okay, so that is all about today's class. So I will share the document in the below the video description, or you can get it in the form as well. So let me stop here for this week, and hopefully we will meet in the next class. I think we will look into some advanced topics like macros and some other binary search stuff in the next week. So okay, so I will take leave.
Sir.
Yeah.
Sir, this is not related to C programming, sir. Will you please teach me that how you are opening in VS Code code? Actually, what is the logic of this code, sir? You are using C lang and clear.
Okay, so the thing is, Sadananda, so there are different compilers. So what the compiler which you are using will be in Windows it is a DOS compiler or GCC compiler. In Linux it is a GCC compiler, but in the Mac, so Mac OS has built a specific compiler apart from this GCC, so which is called as, so there is another language called Objective C. So this particular compiler will work for several cases. So they have built a own compiler called clang. So you can use that compiler to compile your program. So this is specific for Mac OS environment.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. So I have to search from online.
No, don't worry. So this is because I am working on Mac. I can execute by using that statement. So don't worry.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, sure. So we will wind up here, and we will meet in the next class. So thank you guys. Have a great evening. See you in the next class.